Hey, Matt. Great to see you again for
Hey,
another
Anita.
episode of a chat with Anita and Matt.
Absolutely. What's up?
So we were talking about in our last episode about our stories and how it came to be that we moved away from those sort of dark marketing tactics or dark psychology into where we are today, this alternative marketing movement. And I was reading a book, actually. First of all, I heard a podcast by Douglas Vigliotti, and he was interviewing a man called Steve Sims. Now, Steve Sims is a remarkable guy. What he does is he provides experiences for the ultra rich. He's told stories about how he, managed to get a table of six under the statue of David and to be serenaded by Andrea Bocelli. Sorry if I butchered that. To taking some guy on a James Bond weekend, complete with guns, girls, abductions, and everything else. So this guy plays with the ultra rich. This is what he does, makes their dreams come true. So I was listening to Douglas's podcast, and he was interviewing Steve about his experience with his business. Now, if you see a picture of Steve, and I got the picture because I did order his book called Blue Fishing, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But Steve is a guy, he's bald. He's got, I think, an eyebrow piercing. He wears black T-shirts. He drives a motorcycle everywhere. I believe he even races motorcycles. He's hugely passionate about it. And I was thinking about you and I, Matt, because he tells the
Wait a
story.
minute, you thinking about me because the motorcycle or the...
No, not with the motorcycle stuff. That's my gig.
Okay.
I love motorcycles. But it was more about how you and I were talking about how we had all our years of experience with academia and then just practical experience. And when we came into the digital marketing world, we took all these courses from these gurus and just threw everything that we knew and were comfortable with and helped define us like right out the window. So I wanted to share this story that Steve told on the podcast, and then thought you and I could share our stories about how we did the same thing, taking everything we knew.
And I think those other people are going to be saying the same thing because I've heard this said by so many folks, my masterminds as well. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
stuff.
I think this is, I don't want to say a universal experience, but it's certainly something that many people go through. So let me tell you this story. So this is what Steve does. His business is called Blue Fish, and he helps these ultra rich people have these very awesome experiences that they really want. Now, his business was really successful at this point, and he's telling the story about how he chartered a yacht and was throwing a big party on there. He's in, he had decided at this time, right around that time, that his look of, the piercings and the black shirt and the motorcycles just wasn't working. So at this party, he had changed his appearance. He had gone from wearing that outfit that really defined him and he felt most comfortable with to wearing tailored suits. And he said he bought a Ferrari and was driving this. And he said his business actually got even bigger once he changed his appearance. And he's on this yacht. It's a huge yacht. He could be very proud of what he's accomplished. And there's a yacht right beside it that was even bigger. And he said, this is back in the old days. Do you remember when we'd have to take a picture and it would be on a roll of film and you'd have to send it off and wait a couple weeks till you got the pictures back?
Sure.
Okay, so this is back in those days. And he went and he had his picture taken beside this even bigger yacht. And he had to wait a couple weeks. And then he got the photos back and was going through them and didn't really recognize the guy in the photo. That was clearly him standing inside this bigger, in front of this bigger yacht with this beautiful tailored suit, and realizing he had sold himself out. He had, taken everything that was genuinely him and cast it to the side. And he said that was so impactful for him that what he did like that day was get rid of all the suits, drag out his black t-shirts again. He said he sold the Ferrari, brought the motorcycle out, and finally felt like he could be himself again.
But he kept his yacht, right?
I think the yacht was rented.
Okay.
I don't think it was his, definitely not the bigger one. But you and I have done this. And so I thought we've talked kind of briefly about our experiences with it, but I wanted to go into a little more about it. And, you know, what were our aha moments where we sat back and went like, well, what did I just do? Where am I in this business I built? I don't even feel like I exist, even though I'm doing all the quote unquote right things. So that's why I raised this. I thought we could talk about this so other people can relate. And then also, you know, as we talk about what changed for us, that they can also see themselves perhaps there if they've been through the journey or if they're approaching that journey. What do you say?
Yeah. I mean, especially for professionals, for, you know, folks that have been in other businesses like you and I have, and, you know, and we might have similar stories in that way. You know, for my part, you know, I was a former university professor, and I ran a national lab back in the 1990s. And then during the internet boom, the first one, everyone was doing startups, and I left higher education and started up a company, and it was, you know, really successful. I had a lot of fun. It was helping a lot of people, and ran that for about 10 or 12 years, sold it for a lot of money, and didn't do anything for a while, and then got into this online marketing thing. And that was the mistake. What you're saying resonates with me, because I forgot my past in a sense, because I got into the online marketing, and you're told by the gurus, well, this is how you do it. Here's the formula, and here's the method that you use. And you just follow these steps and you do what everybody else does. And I did that. I bought the courses and the platforms and watched all the webinars. I mean, I was on so many lists. I used to keep track of it. It makes me cry looking back on it now. I used to write lists, you know, because I love writing lists. I would write lists of people whose lists I'm on and kind of rate and grade them as they kind of fell out of favor. I found new faces and things like that. And I would say, like, who am I following now? And here's the people I don't follow anymore. I think what a colossal waste of time that was, because I wasn't doing anything. You know, I was just watching everybody else do their things, and I'm buying all their platforms, and I'm just noodling around here. And I just kind of lost sight of how you actually help people, like how I was running a business before, because at our peak, and we were selling over $1 million of services, which was pretty good for a small company that we were, but we were doing it by helping people, by solving their problems, by getting them to trust us. And then I moved into online marketing and kind of left that all behind. I forgot about it. I just thought, well, these online marketing gurus must really know what they're talking about. They don't talk about trust much, and they don't talk about long-term relationships and all the stuff that goes into selling. It was all about how to get leads, how to get eyeballs, how to attract people. And so in a way, I did the same thing as your friend there, kind of threw away what I knew. And it was only recently that I kind of turned back around to kind of get back into that mindset of helping people and building that trust and doing it the right way, so that you can make a business out of that.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell my story just like you did, the beginning part, and then we can chat about how we did that turnaround. Like, because everybody has that moment, like Steve did in that story, where you go like, whoa, what am I doing here? Mm-hmm. So for me, it was very similar. I came from academia, worked there for 14 years in research, and was laid off because of government funding cuts, very common in the university setting when you're in research. I'd had previous businesses and really enjoyed them. They'd always been an avocation for me. So now I was like, okay, I'm going to jump in and make this full time. Same thing. I bought courses, and it was actually Douglas and I were talking, and he had mentioned that these are quote unquote franchise courses. And it just so describes my experience, because I would take each course, and because they were built on that person's philosophies, values, beliefs, they were baked into their methods or their steps. So I would take one course and I would do everything like the dutiful student I was, go through and then build the business. And at the end, I essentially had their business. And then I take another course and I would do the same thing. And sometimes they would be in contrast to the course I had just taken in terms of their values and beliefs that were baked in. And I have some confusion, but I was like, oh, but I'm moving up, right? Things are getting better because now I'm in this course. And I had built a course in, I think it was last year, so about a year ago or so. And this was the last one. I had closed my Facebook ad agency. I wasn't really feeling comfortable with Facebook, and I wanted to move off the platform and go back to my roots, like you, Matt, right? I taught in the university. I really enjoyed teaching people. And so I was like, I'm going to build this course. So there's a really popular digital marketer. I took her course. I built it. And it was interesting because I was really struggling to sell it. And I enjoy selling. I have no problems with it. It's something that I'm very comfortable with. And I'm like, what is going on here that I can't even sell my own course that I created? I should be very proud of it. And over the last few months, I realized what I had done by buying this franchise course was I had built a course that was hers, just with my content. Mm-hmm. It wasn't me. Yes, it is me, of course, but I would have constructed the course very differently. I would have done things very differently, but, being the way I was and not quite having the grounding yet in myself to say, hey, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to go, and to embrace that. I ended up in this situation, which is a horrible situation, building a business I didn't actually want. I never intended to build that business. And so for me, it was struggling to sell. And I was like, what's going on? Because if I really believe in what I'm selling is very easy. And yet here's this course that I created, and yet I'm struggling to sell it. And it was at that moment I stopped and went, okay, whoa, what's going on here? And I realized I had built her course, her business, not mine. And painful part, of course, was realizing that. And then now what am I going to do about it? So I'm going to stop my story there and let you go back, Matt, and fill in for you. What was your aha moment? Like Steve's was getting that photo back and seeing himself there. What was your aha moment?
Well, I'll do that. Let me say something about those courses, though, because that's
Sure.
so tempting, because that's how you're told by the gurus, like, here's how you teach a course. And this online course business is really interesting to me, because I was evaluating online courses in the 1990s. We didn't call them online courses. It was called distance learning.
Oh, yeah, that's what they called it.
And then they changed it to e-learning at the turn of the century. So everything was e-learning. And now it's, of course, online courses. But so, I mean, I have quite a history of watching this. And of course, you and I have taught in the classroom as well. But I think this is going to be a big issue for professionals, for others who are coming from teaching backgrounds. They've been trainers or coaches, and now they step into the online world. And now they're being told, well, here's how you set up your course. And you're like, really? I said, rule number one in psychology, people are different. Students are different. People learn in different ways. And so for these folks to come and say, well, here's how you set up your course, and here's how you sell your course, I just shake my head. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's another one of those aha moments. You're like, here's people who haven't taught I mean, I'll use my experience. The largest I ever taught in front was at Purdue. I taught 524 students.
Wow.
It was like totally frightening. But then I taught my own course. It was 213. I remember those numbers because of the vast numbers of folks out there. It's really daunting to see that many faces out there. 213 students.
Yeah.
And of course, I got smaller students. I got a little smart and cut them down to 60 or 70 students. But folks feel like they can just put on an online course and have 200 or 300 students. That takes a lot to manage, and not like having 200 people in front of you, but there's still it's the concerns of 200 students. And I don't think any of that's taken into account. They're like, oh, well, here's how you do it. You just put out a course. And what you just said about franchise course really hits me, because so many of these gurus have put out courses from 6 years ago, and they're still online, and people are still buying those courses. So courses like how to do your webinar, how to do an online course, that stuff is ancient now. It's so outdated, but it's still up there. It's still, kicking off revenue. So not a lot of that's been updated. So just a real danger for folks buying online courses is realize some of this stuff might be 2, 3, 5, 7 years old. It's not updated like you would do if you were actually teaching your students. You'd be updating your material. It's kind of like the old professors we used to joke about, using their yellowed notes and their overheads that they've used for years and years. And you're like, oh, what a terrible professor. Like he hasn't updated his stuff in 20 years. It's like, that's what they're doing here in the online marketing world. It's like the online equivalent.
Yeah, they sure are. I'd love to get into, we can certainly do another talk on this whole concept of franchise courses. Like I said, when he said that phrase, I was like, oh, it so perfectly summed up my whole experience. So let's get back, Matt, because we're leaving these folks hanging.
Oh, back to the beginning.
What was your moment?
I guess the moment was when I realized, as a psychologist who has taught psychology for a career, seeing that the online gurus are using influence tactics. They're using psychology, which makes sense because psychology works. How do you sell something? Psychology. How do you influence people? Through psychology. But they were using it incorrectly. Like as I'm watching this, I'm like, how can this work? Like, psychology is a lot of cause and effect. You do these sorts of things, and most people tend to do these sorts of things. It's almost cause and effect. Yet they're saying getting results. And I'm like, how can you get results? The scarcity and the urgency and the reciprocity, and here's the formulas you use. And I'm like, how are they making, and I couldn't figure out how they could make this work until I started talking to some folks who are in the inner circles of some of these same gurus. And they let me in on the dirty little secret. It's not working. It's failing. Yes, it used to work, just like everything used to work in the gold rush days of online marketing, but it's not working anymore. People's conversions are low. They're not bringing as many students. They're not getting as many sales, but they don't tell you that. And so you're just led to believe that these same tactics continue to work. So that was the key moment when two different people from two different gurus told me the same thing, that when they use this approach, they're not getting the numbers that they're telling you. And I was like, I was just so, it was like this weight was lifted off me, because I'm like, it didn't make any sense. Like, how could you do this and then people trust you and buy your stuff? The one key one, I think I mentioned this in an earlier episode, was the notion of asking people, pressuring people in the last hour before your cart closes. They say, absolutely, you got to send an email to people in the last hour. That is so critical. If you don't do that, that's where like 50% of your sales comes in that last hour. And I was like, why? Why would people want to be put under that kind of pressure? Why would you say, hey, this is going to be taken away from you in an hour? And that's when I heard the stat from two different people that 75% of people were getting their money back. 75% of the people who bought in that last hour wanted a refund within 30 days. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what should happen. When you put people under that incredible stress and say, you got to buy this now or lose it forever, they'll buy it and then they'll get their money back. They'll say, yeah, buyer's remorse. So then it started to cascade. Then it was like the emperor's new clothes. And I was like, okay, I'm not the crazy one here.
Yeah.
Spent a life in psychology, and now suddenly psychology has changed. Psychology has remained the same. It was just the people hawking it weren't telling the full story. And now everything started to make sense. And I said, okay, good. I don't need those mindsets. I can use what I know has always worked. You know, the tactics and methods of having people express to them, let them know that their voice was heard, what they said made a difference, sharing results with your clients and your customers and your prospects so that they know that what they said was worthwhile, building that sort of trust and relationship with folks. That's how you get them to listen to you. And that's how you get them to listen long enough that they can decide whether what you have to sell is something that can help them. So that was a key moment for me, that little revelation of the data.
And same thing, like to actually take what you'd been doing up to that point and just turning it, 90 degrees another direction versus continuing on the path you were on. Am I correct? It totally shifted everything for you.
Yeah. Because now I stopped, buying the courses and the methods, and because I was trying to figure out why this would work. And of course I'm trying it myself and it's failing. And so it was really discouraging to have gone from the success that I had in a couple of different businesses and in my earlier career to like now suddenly I can't get any attention. I can't get people to realize, stop long enough to see if I have a solution for you. It just wasn't working. Mm-hmm. And so I just figured it was me. And I think that happens with so many folks. Yeah. They're not getting engagement. They're not getting people to watch what they're doing. They're not attracting people to their webinars and their courses. And they're like, what am I doing? I must not be following the formula. Maybe I need to do more of this part of the formula. There is no formula. No. That's probably my best advice. There are no formulas. When you hear people say, well, this is the formula. No, a formula is E equals MC squared. It works every time. What they're selling you is Granny's recipe. And I think we might have talked about that. Yes. You ask them, well, how did Granny make her cookies? Oh, she mixed in like 3 parts flour and some lard and, some fresh eggs off the, and they're just like, they don't know. They just like Granny did something and she makes these awesome cookies. And now you try to make Granny's cookies and you're missing something, and they're like, no, this is Granny's formula. 2 eggs, 2 teaspoons baking soda, but it's not. It's a wild guess at what Granny did. And then we all follow. We're just chasing our tails around, trying to find these formulas. So throw out the formulas and just, it comes down to trust. How do you get people to trust you? You're open and honest and say, look, I have something I think can help you. Here it is. Yeah. I think this can help you. For a lot of people, it'll be no. But there will be some people that this is really going to help. It's going to be a revelation. You're going to save them time and money and make them feel better and be less stressful. And that's your people. And you attract your people. So of course, there's much more to it, but it's just trying to get away from all you have to do is follow this formula and put your videos in this order and make sure your social media icons are here and make sure your social proof is here. The drill. I think a lot of people know the drill. Wasting time.
And again, like to talk about this, like there's so much we can unpack, and it's exciting actually to be able to have this forum to talk about it. But my experience was similar to yours, Matt. I bought all these courses and took them, and like I said, dutiful student, went through step by step and would get excited. And I come out with this product and be like, okay, now what? Nothing's happening. And, in the early days, I didn't know any better. I just knew that I wasn't comfortable. So I would jump into the next course because that hadn't quote unquote worked. And so I would get another course and do that. And it was this last one I built where I just couldn't sell it. And I was listening to somebody talk, and they had mentioned about building a brand around your name. And I hadn't done that up to this point. And so in listening to that, it was the same thing. It was like, bing, light bulbs went off. I realized I had boxed myself in with that course and that business I had built. Yes, it reflected parts of me, but I didn't have the flexibility because, again, it was built on this guru's values and beliefs and her audience, and there, it's not the same as mine. And it was liberating and devastating all in the same moment, where you're kind of like, woohoo, you had mentioned the weight being lifted off. And at the same time, I was also like, oh, it's so awful that I had gone so far off course that I had lost kind of who I was. So that was it for me, was deciding then I'm going to, work with what I had created there, build a brand around my name so that I can own it. It's all mine. It is going the direction I want to go. And like you, Matt, I don't buy those franchise courses anymore. They're done. It was just like all of a sudden I see them coming through my inbox and I'm not interested. I've unsubscribed from the list. I was never quite as devoted as you were, where you were writing them out and ranking them. But I had many. And I unsubscribed from all of them. I think I get 3 different ones now, and that is it. It is simple. The biggest thing, though, is how good I feel. I think that's it. Like you had mentioned earlier, how many times did I think there was something wrong with the way I was doing things because of the apparent success of all these other people through testimonials and their students and videos and all of that? I'm thinking, you know what? There's something wrong with me. I must not be doing this correctly. No, I did, but Granny's recipe perhaps was missing, I don't know, baking powder instead of baking soda, eggs, and then maybe it needed some salt, but in this quantity. So that was it. That was my moment, and I've now built my brand around my name, and it much more reflects who I am, and I feel very comfortable in it. And I love that I built that other business, but it's a small part of who I am, and it limited me. There's nothing worse than building a business you didn't intend to build. And then, what do you do? What do you do? So that was it for me. And this is why Matt, you and I ironically met in the Facebook group of one of those franchise courses.
That's right.
We met there, but both of us got together and started talking because we had similar stories. And
but
now
that same attitude, right? Because I came to you like, how can this work? And you're like, it's not working for me. I'm like, well, it's not working for me either. And
yep.
And that's when this starts, I think, with a lot of folks I've talked to, is like when they finally get together in their masterminds or in their discussion groups, and then no one wants to admit it, but they're like, that doesn't make any, well, it didn't make any sense. It didn't work for me. And then all of a sudden, boom, then they all realize, whoa, we all bought something that didn't work.
Yeah. And I think for me, the biggest thing is now that I fully am owning who I am, what I want, the types of customers and clients I want, now it's going to sound strange, but it's almost effortless now to be able to talk with people, to reach out to, if you want to call it selling, because I guess at the end of the day, that's what it is, but it's easy now because it's fully mine and I stand behind it and I know I can help people and provide the solutions they need. Whereas with that course, well, it might or it might not, because again, it was her course, my content, not at all how I would do it. So this has been a really exciting experience, but boy, devastating when I was like, okay, so I just spent X number of thousands of dollars and probably hundreds of hours to build this. Now what? Now what do I do with it?
Yeah. And it's, I don't know, that this kind of reminded me of that. I'm kind of getting back to my roots now. I think I told you about Champaign University.
Yep.
And that's where I've been this past couple of months is bring it back to something I know. I'm comfortable with higher education, university. And so I think of things, and so I have a set of students who have bought a course. And so I consider them my bachelor's students. My undergrads are there. And then I have students that I've worked with very closely. Those are my master's students. And there's a couple of them that have done really well and they've moved on, and like they know the techniques that I teach and the psychology as I teach it. It's almost like they're my PhD students. And folks like you know, would definitely be adjunct faculty who can speak to students rather than just going out like, oh, I'm going to get affiliates, I'm going to get JV partners. It's like, no, I'm really careful about who talks to my students.
Yes.
It's kind of a vetting process, just like you would have at a university. So that's my imagery, and that's my thing, and that's helped me focus so I don't get, you know, wandering off, because there's so many. I mean, you can really just get bowled over with your email and, you know, getting the opt-ins. You're like, oh, there's a cool little pamphlet or top 10 ways of doing this, or the 5E is easiest, whatever. And then you're on somebody's list, and then they're pelting you with stuff. And a lot of it's great stuff. And that's, but like, you know, your time is so precious and so limited, that I've just had to like, just shut down and say, I know there's a ton of great stuff out there. There's a lot of important people out there, but I've kind of latched on to the people that I really love and trust and care for what they're doing. And I'm just going to focus on them. So for me, it's, you know, these focus techniques. Champaign University keeps me focused on who's important to me, the ones in the school, and focused on what's coming in my inbox. And that's been helpful for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
If,
well, it's been the same here. And I just find it interesting. I remember you were talking about Champaign University, and that just so rings true for me too. Yeah, I created this course and it was great, but it's just a course that sits there. What I like is the personal interaction. So I've taken that and now I'm doing live workshops. I love be able to interact, like you said, in the former classroom environment where you'd have all these eyes staring back at you while you were, you know, teaching them. That's what I love to do. So I did the same thing, went back to my roots, something I felt so comfortable doing and enjoy doing. I think that's the bigger bit. It's something that really feels good and I enjoy it. So therefore I want to do it. And that was it for me, was the workshops. And then later on working one-on-one with people. But I think that that's the biggest challenge of all, is kind of filtering out the noise. Like you said, even with your inbox, you know, protecting it and saying, I'm only letting these people in. It's filtering out all of those messages and this course and that person, you know, sending me this and that and the other, and just going, what do I really want? Who do I want to attract as my ideal customers or clients? What kind of business do I want to build? Just like that, you know, Steve Sims, he said that day he took his Ferrari and he sold it. He took his tailored suits and got rid of them. Went back to his uniform, I think, of a black t-shirt and jeans and boots. That's where he feels most comfortable. And his business is still doing very well. He didn't need to sell himself out in order to make the money. And it's the same here. It's almost like night and day. I don't need to push and fret and freak out about, you know, am I doing it right this way, that way, this way, that way? I can just say, this is what I'm doing. This is where I feel most comfortable. These are the people that I want to work with. Okay, let's go find them. And it's become so much simpler and easier.
Yeah, maybe it's just remind me next time we talk, tell you about my legendary mastermind.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Very much related
I'm
to this,
intrigued.
to this topic. But it's the same sort of thing as this focus. And maybe for some people, all it takes is just stepping away for a weekend and just, you know, focus on those sorts of things, like, who do I want to influence me? You know, they always say you're the sum of the 5 people that you know, your 5 friends, or the 5 people you spend the most time with. Like, who do I want to spend my limited time with? And what is it that I really want to teach the world? What is it, if I died tomorrow, would be lost forever? What is it that I know personally, based on my own knowledge and expertise and skills and experience? There's something I know that I bet not an awful lot of other people know. And if I took that with me, you know, what would be lost? And just focus on some of these big questions. There's a guy named Keith Cunningham who's a great source for that, because he asks the big questions and he promotes like thinking time. And I try to do that just because I love to do it. I love to just sit in a chair,
Yep,
cup
me
of
too.
coffee, notepad, and it's big thinking time. But it's not wasting time. That is really some important time to sit there. And if you can do that, if you had time to do it on a weekend or just take a half a day or something, a lot of this other stuff will just melt away.
Yeah.
Because once you're done with it and then you come back to your computer and you're sitting there messing around with the glitches in your email platforms and my Facebook ads this and my integrations I got to set up. It's so small. It's such minutia. When the bigger thing is that who can you help and what's the big picture that you want to give? So I don't know, that's my advice. Just do some thinking time about some serious questions. It'd be really worthwhile.
Yeah, and I fully agree. That's what I did. I sat down and took in quiet time where it was just me. I've heard people actually going, if you have a really busy house, that they've gone to a hotel and sat there, or if there's, places like coffee shops and stuff like that, they're too busy. It really needs to be a quiet environment to really just push all of that out and introspectively look. And those questions, Matt, I think are fantastic because I did the same thing. I sat down, I think over a weekend and asked, what did I want? I had taken all these courses. I think I had built 3 or 4 different businesses in that time. And yet I still wasn't satisfied with what I was building because it wasn't reflective of me. And since doing that, I swear it's been a massive change. And like you said, it becomes easier. It just becomes easier because now you are the one who's, driving the car or the boat or whatever you want to use as your analogy, but you are the one pushing forward. And I think that that's the biggest thing. I knew what I wanted to offer and sort of the how I wanted to do it. It became simple. Workshops and then consulting. Done. And since I have simplified it, it really has become a lovely process. I'm enjoying it now versus the hustle, grind that I was doing before. Because again, I was buying these courses and they were telling me to do it that way. So I was doing it and I hated it. Absolutely hated it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any last thoughts, Matt?
Yeah. Let me give a couple of thoughts and you might be able to hear the piano in the background. As you know, I homeschool our kids and
no, I don't hear them.
Lessons time.
No. So yeah, go ahead.
Little theme. I guess the two things are not to put so much pressure on yourself because so much I hear it just gets me stressful when people talk about what's your zone of genius, what do you want to do with your life, what's your mission, and you're like, I don't know. I think it was Harv Eker who said, the question is not these big things like what are you going to do with it? It's like what's next.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want to do next? Because you can always change it.
Yes.
And people talk about seasons. Think about in terms of season. This season, I'm going to work on this, or this season is the time I spend on that. So if you take it a little shorter term, and your big thinking time doesn't have to be, okay, I got to make all the right decisions now because this is how I'm going to spend. No, just how are you going to spend the next 3 months? That's a season. What are you going to do next? To me, it just kind of removes the stress and makes thinking time much more enjoyable. But focus on those questions of if you're on your own and you had to do this, maybe if it's just you and a piece of paper, how could you, get your message out there? Who could you help? Yeah. What would you help them with? How can you make people's lives better and richer and healthier? And what's that one thing that you can do that you think most people can't do? Your superpower, some call it. Okay, that's a good place to start.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that. For me, it was actually somebody had suggested sit down and write what your day would look like in this business you're creating. What kind of day do you want to have? And it wasn't just a day, but it was like, so here, I'll give an example. For myself, I have 2 kids and I share 50-50 custody with their dad. So for me, I want to have a business where in the evenings and weekends I have the kids that I can devote myself to them. I don't want to be working late and booking meetings into the evening when I only see them every other week. But on the weeks when I don't have them, I have more flexibility. That was really a critical point for me. So I wrote that down. I also don't want a business where I have 40 employees. I'm not interested. At most, maybe 5. 3 to 5, I think, would be maximum for the business I want to create. And that's what really got me started. Well, if I want this type of business, then I'm likely not going to be building a whole bunch of products and having all these big launches and different things like that, because it doesn't fit with the type of life I want. And that was it. So what do I want my life to look like? When am I going to wake up? When am I going to go to sleep? What are the activities that I'm doing during the day? Like, one thing that I love, if you can't tell already, is blah, blah, blah. I love to talk to people. And so for me, I enjoy chatting with people on the phone and seeing if there's a way that I can help them with the problems they're having. And that was not in that business I built. That was just the course. That wasn't there. And yet it's something I so get, it soothes my soul. It really just lends a big plus for the day. So that was it for me, writing it out. But Matt, 100% agree. Quiet, ask those questions and start from there. So we should wrap this up. We've had a awesome discussion so far. Sorry, I have a bit of a cold, so I'm going to start a coughing fit soon. But Matt, I'll give you the last word if you can take us out, and I will say my goodbye quickly now. All right, folks, we'll speak next week, and Matt, I'll let you finish off here.
All right. Well, next time we'll talk about online courses. We said we're going to talk about that. Legendary masterminds, living in the now. We got a bunch of other topics we'll cover next week. So we'll see you then.
Bye.